Special thank you to my YouTube members and patrons for supporting the channel and supporting my content. How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another subreddit video. Today we are once again going to be returning to r/AmITheA, a subreddit dedicated to asking just that question. Before we begin, just wanted to once again point out that I am in fact streaming every Thursday. I believe that's the day this video is going out, in fact, at 7 PM UK time, so probably around 2 hours as of this video going live. So go check my Twitch out. The link is in the description and probably the comments and most likely on screen, so go check that out. Anyway, let's get into the subreddit, shall we? Am I the asshole for bringing my sister-in-law's wallet to the restaurant when she conveniently always forgets it? Oh, my female 28, sister-in-law Amy, female 26, always comes to visit from out of town. She stays with us instead of a hotel and always wants to go to expensive restaurants. She always conveniently forgets to bring her wallet or comes up with some excuse as to why she can't pay her share. She has implied that since I make much more money than her, I should be the one to pay. No, not my husband should pay, but me specifically. I do make a fair amount of money, but not so much that I can treat someone every time they come into town. Nonetheless, in the past, I have just paid the bill and asked her to pay me back. She never has. She had made a reservation at an extremely expensive restaurant last night, and before we left, I made it clear that I wouldn't be paying her bill. This is where I might be the asshole. And I'll admit, I got this move straight from an episode of 2.5 Men. As we were leaving, her and my husband went to the car. I pretended I forgot something and went back inside. I found her wallet sitting right on top of her suitcase. I put it in my purse and we went to the restaurant. When we were done eating, I asked for separate bills. She said no, we need one bill because she forgot her wallet again. I reached into my purse and said, "This wallet?" She was extremely furious. She said that I should not have touched or grabbed her wallet. So am I the asshole for taking her wallet and bringing it to the restaurant? I agree to the tag on this one that no, you are not the asshole. She forgot her wallet, as she always does. You brought it. Basically what you did was justified, I think. And I think the way you did it is funny and got back at her, right? But that's what could be construed as a little bit of an assholey move, although I don't really think it was. The way you could have avoided this was instead, when you got back to the car, said, "Oh, by the way, I saw your wallet left on the side, you forgot it, here you go," and then she would have had no reason to say, "Oh, I need to leave it behind," right? That would have probably been the best way to handle it, but the gotcha moment of, "Oh, this wallet," is ultimately more funny and classic. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention at the start of this video, I have specifically got a spread of ranked asshole or not asshole, so we'll have a look at both throughout this video. I'd specifically looked at both. So this one says, "Am I the asshole for not wanting to go to my nephew's Little League games? My sister-in-law asked me if I wanted to go to any of my nephew's Little League games. I was pretty blunt and said something along the lines of, I have absolutely no interest in going to any of his Little League games. My nephew was present and didn't seem to care at all that I didn't want to go. My wife and sister-in-law think I'm the asshole for refusing to attend just one of my nephew's ball games and responding that I absolutely don't want to in front of him." Okay, so the first important thing here is that judging by this post, you are somewhat of a present uncle, right? Judging by this, you are in their life and you spend time around them. Even if you don't spend much time with them, you're still around them and in their life. So being a supportive and present uncle would imply that you should go and do things like this with your nephew, but whatever, if you don't want to, you don't want to. The move that makes you the asshole here isn't necessarily not wanting to go to these games. It's being so blunt as to say you don't want to in front of them, right? It's being so socially unaware and uncaring for your nephew that you are willing to just say it in front of them. It doesn't matter if you think that they didn't mind, because they could have minded. And you also don't know what's going through their head as they say that, what their reaction was when you're not there. You were just blunt as to say, "I don't really care about my nephew," in front of your nephew. And yes, that's what makes you the asshole. And it's probably not that you don't want to go to those games that is making your wife and sister-in-law angry. It's probably the fact that you were rude enough as to say it in front of your nephew. Am I the asshole for dropping our dinner on the ground and walking out when my boyfriend asked me, "What's for dinner tonight, bitch?" I was over my boyfriend's apartment this weekend and I was cooking dinner because he was studying for exams. I made pasta and a chunky sauce with meatballs and veggies. I told him dinner was ready and he goes, "What's for dinner tonight, bitch?" with like a lot of emphasis on the last word. I was fed up. I had a pretty rough day with work, and I had some awfully bad associations with that word being used by other people in my life who were pretty abusive. So I was so irritated that I dropped the pot of pasta sauce I'd been carrying right on the ground and was like, well, nothing's for dinner tonight now, and I better not hear you using that word again. It's for the girls. He was freaking out about how the sauce had landed on his rug and even said, you're seriously acting like a bitch right now. I don't know what else to call it. I just walked out and got takeout for myself and went to my friend's house. She thought it was funny, but my boyfriend was furious. He kept texting and calling and sending me voice memos trying to explain that saying, what's for dinner tonight, bitch, was a TikTok trend and that he was just quoting something as a joke to put on TikTok. I thought that was the worst excuse ever. It didn't matter if he saw it as a joke or stole the joke, it was just disrespectful. But it didn't change the fact that he thought it was funny to demean me when I was trying to do him a favor. Like hell, I came over when he was studying to make a home-cooked dinner and he decides it's time for jokes. So I put my phone on Do Not Disturb for the night and split a bottle of wine with my friend and her roommate. The next morning, he was sending me angry texts demanding I clean his rug because he was too busy with exams to do it. I was shocked he left it overnight. That's disgusting. I texted him back saying, yeah, so that's the bitch tax, honey. Leave me alone till you're ready to handle your own cooking and cleaning because this bitch isn't anymore. Also, it's vile you left it soaking in all night. He called me and told me that he was okay with doing his own housework, but I did throw a pot of sauce on the ground, so that's on me to clean up. I told him, yeah, no, I'm not comfortable doing chores for you if you see me like your little bitch. He told me he didn't and it was a trend. I got pissed off. He was playing that TikTok trend BS excuse again, and I told him, well, I'm starting a trend called saucing, where as a little joke, people throw pasta sauce around. You can't be mad, it's just a little trend. A little jokey joke, just a little prank, bro. He got really pissed off and hung up on me, and now I'm seriously wondering if this dumb TikTok joke is going to be the end of things between us. Am I the asshole for how I reacted when my boyfriend asked me, what's for dinner tonight? Edit, to address a comment I've got a lot and I don't have time to reply in time, but did you even tell him not to call you a bitch? Like, how would he know otherwise? Honestly, if someone has gotten to the age of 30 and not realized that women as a whole do not like having demeaning slurs used against them, they're beyond my help. This isn't something that needs to be told. I shouldn't have to go through life like, hey man, just in case you were thinking I like demeaning slurs against my gender used on me, I don't actually. And if you're about to comment something like that, let me just tell you in no uncertain terms. Women do not like being called bitches by men. Do not call women bitches. If you needed to be told that this is unkind, consider yourself officially told. Now you have no excuse to not understand. Honestly, there's so many things wrong with his response. First of all, he insulted her, and she has every right to be upset. Even if it's a TikTok trend, he insulted her, right? That's the baseline thing here, is that he insulted her. It doesn't matter whether she has past things that make it worse. It does matter, but in the whole grand scheme of things, he still insulted her regardless of that, and that just adds to it. Also, the fact that she left. She dropped the stuff on the floor and she left. And he had the entitlement and such a strong belief that he had done nothing wrong that he just assumed she would get over it and come home and clean up the mess. She left at this point and put her phone on silent. And he didn't go, okay, she's clearly not coming back. For the sake of my rug, I should clean up the mess. He went, no, I'm gonna wait for her to come back so I can make her clean up a mess because I insulted her. Like, there's so many levels to that is just wrong. And the fact that he constantly was like, oh, it's just a TikTok thing. Just get over it. It's a TikTok thing. And couldn't see the error here, that he had clearly upset her. And rather than apologizing and saying, that's my bad, I didn't understand that this would upset you, he just went, why are you upset? It's a TikTok trend. And shows no attempt at understanding the fact that he's made her upset. Like, he deserved to have to clean up that mess on the floor, honestly. And ultimately, I think is a sign that the relationship probably isn't going to end up working. If things like this can't be resolved by communication because he is unwilling to communicate or unwilling to take responsibility for mistakes, it's probably better off that the relationship end as a result of something like this than for the relationship to carry on, get really long term, get really serious, and then things like this cause rifts and not get resolved and just slowly dig more and more into an ongoing relationship. But that's just my opinion. Am I the asshole for refusing to cut my son's toenails anymore? This title's a little bit misleading misleading. I, 42 male, have 2 children, Arnold 15 male and Maeve 10 female. I've been trimming my son's toenails since he was 2, as his nails have always been more thick and longer than usual. If I wasn't to trim them, it would affect his mobility and would be pretty uncomfortable to walk with. Even when they've been trimmed, they still have a pretty distinctive smell, and it isn't pleasant. We've been to doctors over it, but they just believe it to be down to his hygiene, which wouldn't surprise me as Arnold's never really cared for it. Now, Arnold is pretty self-conscious of himself, mainly due to him being ginger and his toenails, so he struggles to get the motivation to care for them. I do sympathize, but yesterday I snapped. Arnold had stayed off school for a GP appointment. We'd been waiting 3 months for it, for his toe. The doctor asked what he'd been doing to care for it, and he took all the credit for keeping it well, when he's done nothing for himself. It's either his mum or me. It was pretty annoying, but thankfully they proceeded to ask questions only I'd know, etc. Do you apply oils to the nail? What type of oils? How many times a day do you trim it? He went red and was umming and erring, but still didn't back down about lying to them. Well, once they left, I yelled at him. I was annoyed, not only because he took credit for something I'd done his whole 15 years on this earth, but also because he mucked up the questions and made it seem like nothing was wrong with his nails. We were given nothing. We waited 3 long months for my son to muck it all up, and now I have to reschedule a new appointment. I lashed out and told him he should man up and start caring for himself. I told him I'd no longer be caring for his nails and that it's his responsibility now, which honestly, it should have been a while ago. My son called me an asshole for it and hasn't spoken to me since. My wife believes I did the right thing, but I think I may have stepped a line with my son. So with this being said, am I the asshole? Yes, for multiple reasons here. First of all, you are really focused on the fact that your son took credit for caring for his nails to a doctor. And like, the fact that that was a big focus of this is just a bit weird. He's a 15-year-old boy and he's being asked by a doctor what happens with his toenails. It's probably really uncomfortable for him and embarrassing the fact that he doesn't care for them himself. So of course it would make sense that he'd say like, oh, this is what I do, and probably try and move away from the fact that it isn't him that does it, it's you, because that's embarrassing and uncomfortable for him as a 15-year-old. Second of all, you have allowed him to get to 15 years old without showing him how to care for it. He is 15 years old, and if you apply oils and do anything like that, you clearly haven't talked him through the process of what you do, which is something you should have done a long time ago. You have let it get this far. You have let it get to the point where he is 15 years old and doesn't know how to look after this issue, and all of the things that you do to help it, you have not shown him or taught him how to do. This is something you should have done a long time ago, so that over time you slowly get him to do it himself more and more. The fact that you have taught him none of that and have now just gone, oh, you screwed up this meeting with the doctor, you're doing it all himself now, shows that you are an asshole. You cared more about the fact that he took credit for something you did than your own son's health. You could have answered all of the questions the doctor was asking and have gotten your son the care he needed, but you chose to let him go through with taking the credit. You chose to be annoyed about that and to rip into him afterwards because you deemed that more important than his actual health. And that's what makes you the asshole. Am I the asshole for letting my aunt and uncle get kicked out of their house for not letting my husband and I sleep together? I, male 27, am married to a man, male 28. He is the love of my life. I had only ever dated women before him, but when I met him, I realized I was bi and we fell in love. We got married in the fall of 2018, so it's been almost 4 years. We now live in Vermont. My whole family is from a small town in Texas, a super conservative Catholic area. I was raised there, but dad got a job in New York City when I was 15. The culture shock was difficult. We went from living in rural Texas to living in an apartment in Manhattan. My parents didn't sell our house in Texas. They allowed our aunt and uncle, who had just had their 3rd child, to move in while charging them a small rent. In college, when I came out as bi, my brother and dad were very supportive. My mum needed some time to accept. The rest of my family reacted poorly at first, but came around. During visits, we stayed with my aunt and uncle at the old house, but because we weren't married, we weren't allowed to share a bed. We didn't argue, we both would rather make peace. Visiting since, instead of staying with my aunt and uncle, we would rent a motel room. During COVID, we did not visit them, but this summer my parents and bro decided to visit my hometown again for 2 weeks, and invited my husband and I. I wanted a motel again, but my aunt and uncle insisted my brother and husband and I stay with them. The first night, sleeping situation was discussed after my cousins went to bed. My aunt and uncle wanted me and bro to take the spare room, husband on the couch. All 3 of us took issue with that. They snapped that we were not really married because we were gay, and that they had children in the house. They said that it would be a bad influence on their kids. This hurt my husband's feelings and he started crying and ran out of the room. When my husband ran out, my uncle had the audacity to start laughing. That's when I saw red. I started cussing them out so loudly that my young cousins came to investigate. I told them that if they didn't go and apologize to my husband immediately, that I was going to tell my dad what just happened and I was going to make sure to have them kicked out of the house that was still in my parents' name. My bro seconded everything that I was saying. They started backtracking and saying that we were still welcome in their house, but that we had to follow their rules. I responded that it wasn't really their house. I told them they were going to be homeless if I had my way. The kids started crying because they heard me say that they were all going to be homeless, so we left. My husband was on the porch crying. I promised him I would never subject him to that again. I told dad what happened. To say that my dad was angry would be an understatement. He served them a notice of eviction for 60 days. I have been getting calls and texts and Facebook messages from my family calling me an asshole. I want to know, am I the asshole for allowing my young cousins to end up homeless? Is it fair that they have to pay for what my aunt and uncle said to me and my husband? You're not the asshole. Ultimately, your young cousins are collateral, okay? It's unfortunate that they aren't gonna have that as a home anymore, but your aunt and uncle should find somewhere to live. And honestly, that's their responsibility. They were homophobic to you and were outright homophobic to your face and to your husband's face, and your dad, the owner of the house, agreed with you when you discussed this. So ultimately, there was every right from you and your dad to be angry about this and to evict them. I think that's the end of, really. The audacity to say, oh, you're not really married because you're gay, and that being gay is a bad influence on their children, like, that's disgusting behavior, and they deserve to be evicted from their home for that. Like, sure, they have freedom of speech, they're allowed to say what they want. However, freedom of speech does not mean free from consequence. You can say what you want, sure, but you still have to face consequences of your actions for saying it. So ultimately, those are their consequences. Yeah, I think that's the end of, really. It's nice to see that your dad was also accepting of you coming out and that he was willing to defend you in something like this. I think that's a really great thing. It's nice seeing parents that accept their children. It shouldn't have to be a nice thing to see parents accepting their children. That should just be the norm. But in the world we live in, it's nice to see when parents accept their children. And the post I'm going to end on: am I the asshole for refusing to do chores when I was high? We're off to a good start. I went to the dispensary last weekend to get some edibles. Edibles? Yes, edibles. That word sounds wrong now. Last night, and within an hour, was feeling the effects. Everything was going well until my dad came in and said I had to help move food from the fridge to a neighbor's fridge because ours had stopped working. I was laying on the couch and said that I was high and if he could get someone else to do it. He stood there and made me get up, so I was forced to help with that. 20 minutes later, I was back on the couch feeling good, but of course he popped in the room again to say the dog had pooped on the carpet upstairs and I had to clean it up. I said I was chilling and that I already helped him with the fridge thing. He kept insisting for me to do it, but I said why couldn't he do it, and he got really mad. I told him he was killing my vibe, but he wouldn't stop telling me to do it. He completely ruined my high and I was pissed. I get that the food had to be moved because otherwise it would spoil, but the dog poop was not an emergency, and if he couldn't be bothered to do it himself, he could wait for my brother to get home to do it. I refused to do it even after I was sober because he had robbed me of my experience. After his interruptions, I wasn't able to enjoy the rest of my high. So, am I the asshole for doing this? Absolutely yes. This one shouldn't even be a question. You are old enough to go to a dispensary and get high, but you're living with your parents. If you're old enough to do that, you're old enough to take accountability and do chores. Being high is not a reason to skirt your responsibilities. You don't just, oh, I'm high now, therefore I have no more responsibilities. There are things that need to be done. You have roles in the house. You're living with your father when you are old enough to move out, and you are refusing to do these things because you're high. Yeah, that makes you the asshole. I forgot to mention that he says that cleaning up the dog poo is not an emergency. However, leaving it there will, first of all, make an awful smell that will just permeate the house, but second of all, if not cleaned up, will actually just stain the carpet, so is a legitimate priority to get it cleaned up for multiple reasons, and also just gross. And that's where I'm going to end the video, everybody. I hope you have enjoyed. If you want to support me in making more content like this, then I have a Patreon in the description down below, or equally you can click the join button on the channel to support me. It helps a lot more than you might realize, but by no means should you feel like you have to. As I mentioned earlier, I have a Twitch in the description description, so go follow that so you don't miss a stream. I stream every Thursday, UK time, 7 PM for a few hours, so go check that out. It's been fun streaming so far. I've streamed a couple of times, so definitely go check that out. Special thank you to all of my YouTube members and patrons for supporting the channel. All of the names are on the screen here. Thank you guys so much. It helps so much. Genuinely, it helps like an insane amount, so thank you all for supporting the channel. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.